Hi, everyone. I'm here to talk to you about Ronald Reagan, who's basically president for most of the 1980s, and his role with the economy. So think of the economy as like an engine. You want to make sure that it doesn't go too fast, because if you do, then there will be inflation because people will be buying too much stuff and the prices will go up. But at the same time, you want to make sure that the economy is not going too slow because that will lead to a recession. Businesses will close, people won't be buying stuff, and there'll be less jobs. So there's been a big debate over what to do when there is one of these recessions, when the economy slows down too much. And for a long, long time, politicians subscribed to Keynesian economics, which we've studied already. Remember, FDR was a big proponent of this in the 1930s. And basically, Keynesian economics, remember, says that when there's an economic recession or slowdown in the economy, the government is the only option to get us out of it. So the government needs to spend more money. That's why FDR started his New Deal and started paying people to plant trees, do infrastructure projects and things like that. Reagan comes in, on the other hand, and dramatically shifts that. So from the 1930s up until Reagan, most presidents, Republican and Democratic alike, believed in when there's an economic recession, the government needs to spend money to get us out of it. But Reagan does not believe in that. He believes in something called supply side economics, where he wants to affect the supply curve. And so he does not believe that it's the government's job to fix the economy. And that was a huge difference. So we want to talk about Reaganomics, or supply side economics. Make sure you better understand that. There are two main things I want you to understand about Reaganomics. First of all is that tax cuts are a key part of Reaganomics, or again, also called supply side economics or trickle-down economics. Here you can see Ronald Reagan delivering a televised address from the Oval Office detailing people's reduction in taxes. And on this graph, you can see how much taxes went down, specifically from the left red arrow to the right one. The income taxes, they dropped, for instance, from 70% down to 28%. So that doesn't mean that people were paying 70% on all of the money that they made, just on your excess earnings. But again, it dropped from 70 down to 28% down. Here you can see. So a huge change, a huge drop in income taxes. And also this gray one shows you again from the 1980s that there is again another big drop in corporate taxes, the amount of money that businesses were paying in taxes. So again, tax cuts was a big part of Reaganomics. And the other key component to Reaganomics is deregulation. Think of a regulation as a rule for business. And so he wanted to deregulate them. He wanted to get rid of or reduce those rules on businesses. So if you think of the example of, imagine if you were a babysitter and you were doing that to make money, and now suddenly there was, you needed to buy a certain uniform, have a certain license, take a certain course, in order to get certified. All of that stuff costs money. So if I asked you if you were going to be a babysitter and you had to pay all this money in order to do it, you might say, no, not so much. He wants to deregulate that business, for instance. Again, this is hypothetical. He's not deregulating babysitters. But so the idea is that that will make it more profitable for businesses, the babysitters, and open up jobs. So that is the benefit, the idea behind deregulation. This is often called trickle-down economics because the idea behind Reaganomics is that the money, the tax cuts and the deregulating businesses is going to benefit the wealthy people, the businesses, but then it will trickle down to the lower classes. So that's the idea behind it. This cartoon is poking fun at that. It's being critical of trickle-down economics, saying that, hey, there's obviously a lot more money that's going to the rich versus the poor. They're getting very little. So that was one of the criticisms of Reaganomics or trickle-down economics, is that it only really helps the wealthy. The benefit, supply-side economics would argue, supply-side economists would say that it's creating more jobs. Another criticism of Reaganomics is that if you're going to starve the government of all of that money that came from taxes, corporate and individual income taxes, that it's going to add to our debt, because where's the government going to get its money to spend stuff on? And that's exactly what happens under Reagan, as you can see here, that the debt was going down after World War to, but then it definitely starts to go up in the 1980s. So another criticism is that we are going to add to our debt in the 1980s. The last thing I want to talk to you about is, if we're talking about Reagan in the economy, is his role with workers. And if you ever had any sort of LEQ, DBQ, SAQ on labor unions or the 1980s, you could definitely pull this Quizlet term, right? Air traffic controllers strike. This was when a group of air traffic controllers went on strike because they were demanding safer working conditions, reduced hours, higher pay. And because they were employees of the federal government, Reagan did not take their side and actually fired them, and charging them with violating their contract. And ultimately, this led to the practice of hiring more non-union workers in different industries, and overall, over time, a reduction in labor union membership. And you can kind of see that with this graph, that there's declining workers in unions during Reagan's time and thereafter. So hopefully that helps explain kind of what Reagan was up to with the economy, including his stance on labor unions. Have a great day.